we'll be ready.
College football, it's the Badgers and Illinois this Saturday night. Kickoff at Camp Randall Stadium at 6:30. Carter Smith at quarterback in a year that Wisconsin has lost 2 others to injury.
It has been an Achilles heel. There's no doubt about it. But moving forward, we have to find consistency. We have to find depth. And some of that might be in some youth as well. And so the last few weeks of the season, that's what we got to see if we can figure out and see if we can help develop in Carter. And then we need to be able to move forward as once the season ends.
That's Badgers head coach Luke Fickell with Sports on Mike Clemens.
Construction barrels bloom every spring. So do opinions. WMDX, guiding Madison through life's most predictable surprises.
It is going to be partly to mostly cloudy today with a high in the low to mid 40s this afternoon. Tonight, mostly cloudy. We're going to drop to 38 for a low. Tomorrow, couple of scattered light showers possible with highs in the low to mid 50s. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Currently, it's 28.
This portion of the John and Gordy Show is brought to you by Verlo Mattress. Each mattress is made to order right here in Madison. Your comfort changes, so you're fine.
Show here on WMDX in Madison, part of the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm not John and I'm not Gordy. I'm Matt Rothschild. The guys are off today since they've been doing double duty, so I'm subbing in for them, and I'm here with our great producer, Dom Lee. Dom, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. It's a little cold in studios. I don't know if you felt that, but I decided to turn up the thermostat because my hands, I'm kind of a skinny guy, so I need a little bit of circulation going through my veins.
Well, I'm not so skinny, so I have to take my sweater off. I run hot, so there you go. Listen, you and I have arranged a terrific show this morning. If I might say, we're going to be talking about the Democrat candidates for governor in this first half hour. And if you want to tell us who your choice for governor is, just give us a call at 608-879-8255. That's 608-879-8255. You can also text at that number. Then we got Nick Ramos at 6:35. Nick is the executive director of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. We'll be talking about Donald Trump and his latest obscenities. And then at 7:05, a staff member of the International Crane Foundation, that terrific group up in Baraboo, will be here to talk about a bill that's coming up for a hearing in just a matter of hours up the street at the Capitol, a bill to allow the hunting of sandhill cranes, of all things. Finally, at 7:35, Jeff Mandel, the head of Law Forward, will be dropping by, so it should be a lot of fun. I also have a poem and a couple bird songs for you these next couple hours. But first, I'm relieved to say that the Democrats have a roster of great candidates for governor, some of whom were just at the Alliance Center yesterday for a forum on homelessness. Dom and I have been hearing from them over the last couple of weeks as we've had a parade of candidates come through the office here, Dom.
Yes. And it's been amazing. I feel like I have to wear a suit every single time, because I know yesterday we talked to Crowley, right?
Yeah, we talked to Milwaukee County Exec David Crowley.
Yeah.
In the evening, and in the morning, we talked to Missy Hughes, Secretary Hughes, former Secretary of Wisconsin Economic Development Corp, WEDC. And we've had other candidates come through here. They've been coming through because I've been doing a podcast for Civic Media here for the last year and a half called Wisconsin Forward. And I'm giving each of these candidates about a half hour, basically just to introduce themselves to our audience and to Wisconsin voters. So you can find the Wisconsin Forward podcast at civicmedia.us and just look for the Wisconsin Forward podcast there. And we also have other candidates coming through. We've got Kelda Royce coming in this morning, and a couple others. So it's been fun just to meet them. Some of them I've met before in my previous incarnations.
I could tell, yeah. Some of them, they knew who you are as soon as you walked through the door. I was like, wow. Okay.
Well, I've been around a while, so what are you going to do? Anyhow, we'd like to offer you a snippet of some of these interviews so you can get a flavor of the candidates in their own words, in their own voices. Let's start off with State Rep here in Madison, Francesca Hong.
My first priority is to ensure that every Wisconsinite has basic needs met and can live a life of dignity, have opportunity, and economic security. And if Republicans are interested in working with me on that, I am going to hear them out and make sure that they are at the decision-making table. I think with a Democratic majority in either house, which I believe that is going to happen in the Senate, there is going to need to be negotiations and compromise on the part of Republicans as well. If they care at all about keeping their seats, they're going to need to deliver for communities. That I hope is going to be one thing that we share, is that we know communities deserve better, and we have to enact universal policies to make sure they improve their lives. And that's the expectation I'm going to set for the legislature.
And can you set an example of how you've worked with Republicans in the legislature?
I've passed legislation with Republicans, the Asian American Education Bill, that would require Asian history and talk about lived experiences that would need to be in every K-12 classroom in public schools. And so this was a bipartisan bill that the governor signed a couple of years ago. And, it showed that they are still capable, and even the foul-mouthed lefty from Madison is capable of working with Republicans to pass legislation that is meaningful for communities and especially takes care of our kids.
So that's State Rep Francesca Hong. She is running for governor. She's our rep here in the Madison area. Dom, I wanted to get your sense of her, listening to her right there.
She was very well spoken. I know when she came through here, she was one of the first, candidates that we've interviewed, and she was very well spoken. She was very nice, and she sounds like she knows what she's doing, and she's very. I feel like she's very, upfront about stuff, and she doesn't, letting things go under the wing. So that's what's really nice about.
Yeah, I liked her speaking style. It was so quiet, almost whispery, yet substantive, and it just made me listen more closely, focus more intently on what she was saying. And it had the intimacy of just a one-on-one conversation, which is what we do. But sometimes when we have candidates in here, they're more rehearsed, should we say? And hers was more of a conversation, though I thought a lot of them were conversations. A couple of things she mentioned there I wanted to follow up on. I mean, I thought her dignity, opportunity, economic security was a good pitch. Certainly every Wisconsinite should have dignity, opportunity, and economic security. And then I almost laughed when you played the end bit, because she talks about being this foul-mouthed legislator. We asked her later in the conversation about that, and she just said, it's who I am. But we had the buzzer ready in case she let loose with a swear word while she was here, but she didn't do that. But she's not afraid to do that, and I asked her about it, and she said, it's who I am. I've been in restaurant work my whole life. Right. That's how we talk. and she's not going to, put a rose colored glass over things that are lousy. If they're lousy, she's going to say so in plain English, and for her, that plain English can be a little bit strong.
Yeah, and I felt like I knew her my whole life. When she walked in here, I was like, oh wow, it felt like I was also in the room with you guys having that conversation. So it was really a really nice interview.
Yeah, and the lane that she's taking in this race is kind of the AOC lane. Both because they worked in the restaurant business and bar business, but also because they're Democratic socialists and not afraid to talk about it. And so I talked with her about what it meant to be a Democratic socialist and what that means to her. So if you want to listen more to my interview with Representative Francesca Hong, you can just go to civicmedia.us and look up the Wisconsin Forward podcast. So who do we have next? We have Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez.
We do, yes.
Awesome. Let's take a listen.
I am active in my community. I was my daughter's Girl Scout leader. I volunteer for the Humane Society. I show up at the PTO meetings. And being involved in the community means that people know who I am. And whatever they were trying to paint me as within Waukesha County, the people of Waukesha knew that that wasn't what Sarah was like. And having those conversations, knocking on doors, talking to people, those are the kind of things that I enjoy doing. And I'm planning on doing as running for governor. We're doing listening sessions in all 72 counties all across the state in this primary, because all politics is local and all those needs are local, and we need to be able to listen to folks. But when I was in the assembly, if I got calls from some of my Republican constituents, I always called them back. Always personally called them back, did not have a staff member do it. I personally called them back to be able to hear and listen to what their concerns were. And so, because I think good ideas can come from a whole lot of different places. And it was a way for me to have a discussion with the constituent so that we understood where each person was coming from. We didn't always agree at the end of that phone call at all, but at least we had a general understanding of where we were coming from.
There's a big discussion within the Democratic Party. Do you try to convince those people who are not identified as Democrats or independents or the vanishing species of moderate Republicans, or do you just try to get the base out? Where are you on that?
It's not an or, it's an and, right? We have to make sure that we are meeting our Democrats where they are. And what I'm hearing from people is that they want somebody who's going to fight for them. They want somebody who's going to stand up to Donald Trump. They want somebody who's going to be strong in the face of what Trump is doing. And I am willing to do that, to use that bully pulpit of the governor's office to make sure that Wisconsin values are adhered to and that we are not allowing Trump to come into the state and do things that we know Wisconsinites don't want.
So that was Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, who was in here just a few days ago. We got a text saying Matt and Dom are lighting up the morning. We appreciate that feedback. You can call or text too and tell us how you're taking the show right now. 608-879-8255. That's 879-8255. And also tell us who your favorite candidate is for governor. What I liked about Sarah Rodriguez, Dom, was, she talked about listening to people who probably didn't vote for Republican constituents, and that's good. I like the fact that she's saying she'll stand up to Donald Trump.
Right.
She didn't mince any bones about that. And later in that conversation, I talked to her about public health, because she was a public health nurse before she became lieutenant governor. And she also had a job with some health companies too. And just what RFK Jr. has been doing to the public health of this country and the citizens of Wisconsin, and how dangerous it is and how people are going to suffer as a consequence, especially kids who aren't being immunized. She used to work at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And so she has a great perspective on these issues of public health. What did you make of the lieutenant governor?
I also thought it was another great conversation. That was, I think, the day after, and it was just it went right on through. And she definitely is, louder when she has a different approach than Francesca Hong. where she's, again, outspoken and she likes to get her ideas through. And she does like just to have a conversation, even with people who don't necessarily agree with her. So I like that part about her too.
And just to give the listener the heads up, what I do is with each candidate, I just start out every conversation. Why do you want to run for governor? And this is essentially what the answer that Dom is plucking for us. But I also tell them, we're not going to edit this. We're not going to mess around with their answers, do anything in production. We are giving them an opportunity to talk to you, the citizen of Wisconsin, about what their vision is for the state, how they would react on a number of issues, especially dealing with Donald Trump, and what issues are most important to them. So it was pretty wide open. And I think it lets you get a real feel for where they're coming from. And so, we're going to come back after the break and hear from another candidate or two and take your calls at 608-879-8255. You're listening to John and Gordy in the morning. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in for them on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back.
Phone calls, we want your phone calls. Gotta have your phone calls today. Here's the number to call. That's 608-879-8255. That's 608-879-8255. WMDX Madison.
Good morning and welcome back to the John and Gordy Show. John and Gordy in the morning here on WMDX in Madison, part of the Civic Media Radio Network. Of course, I'm not John and I'm not Gordy. I'm Matt Rothschild. The guys are off today. They've been working double shifts, so I'm pitching in for them this morning. And I'm here with our great producer, Dom Lee. We're talking about the Democratic candidates for governor this half hour. Who is your favorite? Call us. 608-879-8255. That's 608-879-8255, as you heard in the jingle. And we do have a caller. We have Joe from Madison. I always like listening to Joe and her thoughtful questions and comments. Joe, how are you this morning?
Great to hear your voice. I'm glad to hear it. And say hi to Dom too. And that jingle is like a cup of coffee on supercharge. I just, it does wake you up. It's great. I was interested in just offering a few thoughts about the candidate Kelda Royce. And there are a couple of things about her that really struck me. I went to a meet and greet with her, and one of them was that she too is more than willing to go take the fight on elements from the federal government coming down from Trump and company and tackling them. More than willing to do that. It was elbows up clearly on that situation. She had a couple of things that I thought that she said that separated her from this other pool of very talented candidates. One item was that in the time she's been in the legislature off and on for a long time, and she's the only candidate so far that's ever served on Joint Finance, which is of course the committee that is, in charge of crafting the bill, which is of course what the governor's, that directs our direction in the state. So she has that experience behind her. She also has the experience of knowing the legislature before Walker and this current group of Republicans got in and after. So she's got, some ways to look at the legislature in terms of how to adjust things so that they work better. And then the final thing she has, which to me is just a game changer, is that she is really in favor of allowing every citizen in the state to partake of the state healthcare system and the state pension system. And I'm telling you, the gift that is for people to know that their pension is going to be well managed by one of the most well managed pension systems in the country, for sure, possibly in the world, and then in the state healthcare system where you increase the number of people in the pool and then increase the power that you have for directing good healthcare for people in the state. I just thought that last item in particular is a game changer. When the state pension fund was devised back in the 1930s, when things were so dire, they had planned that everybody could participate. But because of Republicans at the time, saying no, they couldn't get that through. All they could get through were people who were employed by the state. If other people in the state working as a farmer, hairdresser, whatever, had an opportunity to partake of this system and the power of having these smart people direct your money, and they're directed to be stable about it. They've done a great job. So at any rate, that was a game changer for me. I thought that would really change a lot of people's lives to reduce the worry on those two items of pension and healthcare. So thanks, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity to talk, and great idea to have these candidates on and just say, we're not going to edit it, just you make the case. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Joe. I'm glad you're appreciating what we're doing over here at Civic Media. And yeah, we're going to have Kelda Royce here in this studio at 8:30 this morning. And so if you want to hear that conversation, it'll be at civicmedia.us at the Wisconsin Forward podcast. I think we have time to listen to a bit of Missy Hughes, who was the secretary for the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation under Evers, and then 17 years before that, worked at Organic Valley. Let's take a listen.
Well, what I see in politics today is one-upmanship, is gamesmanship, a lot of competition rather than a lot of cooperation. And I think as a politician, you really build those muscles to fight. You really say, what can I win? How can I put the other side down? Yeah, for myself, coming from working for farmers, coming from working for a cooperative and doing economic development, I want to find solutions. And I don't find that politicians these days are necessarily driven towards solutions. They're driven towards the fight. And that's why I think it's really important to point out that I am not a politician. I've never run for office. I'm a business person. I'm a mom. And that combination means I got to find my way through and find solutions.
Finding solutions, finding cooperation. In this era of politics with Donald Trump and how polarized things have been, actually in Wisconsin with Scott Walker and how polarized things got there in 2010, it's kind of a tall task.
It feels like a tall task, but I'll tell you, when I talk to community leaders all around the state, just something that I did as secretary, I traveled all around the state talking with community leaders about what they wanted to do in their communities to make their communities better. People are ready to roll up their sleeves and work with whoever shows up. if you show up with 10 volunteers, I don't care what color shirt you're wearing. I want you on the team, and I want you to help me make my community better. And so while it seems like things are very divisive at the local, at the neighborhood and community level, people are really wanting to work together because they can control what they can control and they can solve what they can solve.
So that was Missy Hughes. She's running for governor. She was at the Economic Development Corporation under Evers. She is taking kind of a different pitch, wouldn't you say, Dom, than the other candidates we've interviewed? She's not really talking to the base so much.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with you. Yeah.
And, maybe it'll work. She says she's running on the I'm not a politician. And people are sick of politics as usual, and they're sick of politicians as usual.
Right.
Certainly Donald Trump made hay on that. And Bernie Sanders, to some extent, made hay on that, too. We'll see if the lieutenant governor can do that and whether Missy Hughes can do that. I mean, lieutenant governor was talking as a politician. Missy Hughes as an anti-politician. And we'll hear a little bit more from one more candidate when we're back. And then we're going to have Nick Ramos from the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. You're listening to John and Gordy in the Morning. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in for them here on the Civic Media Radio Network. And please stay tuned.
Junkie across Wisconsin in her Suburban truck. Thanks to Equity Livestock Cooperative, marketing your livestock, financing your operation, and supporting the livestock community since 1922. And to Cleary Building Corp. Cleary Building Corp. Built with pride before the shamrock is applied. Explore clearybuilding.com today. Keep up with Pam at MidwestFarmReport.com and on Facebook and Instagram.
Welcome back. I'm Ben Jarbo at the Midwest Farm Report. Now let's see how the markets looked on yesterday's close. Cash corn closed up 2 cents at $4.36 3/4, with new crop corn down 1/2 penny at $4.69 1/4. Cash soybeans closed down 3 3/4 at $11.53 1/2, with new crop soybeans down 2 cents at $11.27. December wheat is up 2 1/4 at $5.46 1/2, with July wheat down 1/4 at $5.77 1/2. December milk contracts are up 9 cents at $16.94 hundredweight, with January contracts down 2 at $15.98 a hundredweight. 40-pound blocks of cheese closed up 1/2 penny at $1.56 1/4, and butter closed down 2 1/2 at $1.52 1/2. For the Midwest Farm Report, I'm Ben Jarbo.
Local news, real voices, and conversations that count. That's Madison. And that's 92.7 WMDX.
It is going to be partly to mostly cloudy today with a high in the low to mid 40s this afternoon. Tonight, mostly cloudy. We're going to drop to 38 for a low. Tomorrow, a couple of scattered light showers possible with highs in the low to mid 50s. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Currently, it's 28.
At Burlow Mattress, Black Friday's going on all month long. Get a free adjustable base upgrade with a mattress set purchase. Every mattress we make is factory direct and custom made locally just for you, which means we're passing on hundreds, even thousands of dollars in savings to you all month long. Plus, your Burlow mattress is backed by our lifetime comfort guarantee. You won't find a better Black Friday deal or a higher quality mattress anywhere else for less. A lot less. American made, locally crafted. Burlow.
Join me, Tom Hartman, each and every weekday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the Tom Hartman program right here on Civic Media. I talk about the issues that all Wisconsinites can get behind, from unrigging our economy so it works for all of us, not just the billionaire class, to improving our representative government, to delivering on the promise of we the people. Tune in middays right here on your local Civic Media station from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for the Tom Hartman program. Tag, you're it.
As the 21st century began, human evolution was at a turning point, a dumbing down, until humanity was incapable of solving even its most basic problems.
This is grade A weapons grade stupidity.
Just doing my civic duties. We can duck and cover. There's a fallout shelter right there.
There's no way to survive this, you idiot!
Idiocracy.
For the smartest guy in the world, you're pretty dumb sometimes.
Hey, good morning, and welcome back to John and Gordy in the morning here on WMDX in Madison, part of the Civic Media Radio Network. By now, you must have guessed. I'm not John, and I'm not Gordy. I'm Matt Rothschild. The guys are off today since they've been doing double duty. I've been called in from the bullpen, so here I am with our great producer, Dom Lee. We're talking about the Democratic candidates for governor, wondering who your favorite candidate is. Let us know at 608-879-8255. Give us a ring, 608-879-8255, or send us a text. Love to hear from you. It was great to hear from Jo right before the break. She always has substantive things to say, which I really appreciate. So, Dom, we had one other interview with a Democratic candidate just last night at 6 o'clock.
Yes.
Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley came into the studios here at Civic Media to sit down with me for a half-hour conversation about why he's running for governor. Let's just take a listen to a bite of that.
Well, anytime we're seeing any level, particularly when it comes down to our tech colleges and university systems, 4 or 2 years, seeing any of these systems close, we got to take a hard look in the mirror and seeing what are we doing to make sure that our young people have a better pipeline to actually enter these systems. And so, and I'm one of those students where it took me a while to graduate. I just actually went back to school and graduated this past December 2024, something that I promised my mother.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you for that. And so I am a product of the UW system. And I think it's extremely important that folks realize that, yes, we've seen a record increase in the UW systems within this past budget. But if you look at the past decade, they have been hammered and they have not had enough money to actually make sure that they can provide the level of education for particularly in-state students. And we've also seen the rate of increase when it comes down to tuition. And so we have to provide relief, particularly for Wisconsin families, making sure they have a much better pipeline to go into our UW systems. But I would be the first to say, I know college isn't for everyone. And if there are ways that we can help them on their road to prosperity when it comes down to being an entrepreneur or entering a trade, that's something where we should focus on. But we used to have a world-class UW system, and that has fallen off. And quite frankly, we've seen that under the tutelage and guidance of Scott Walker. And we have to make sure that we repair the damage that has been done in the past decade and a half.
And it used to be totally affordable, and now it takes a bite out of people.
I mean, it's no longer affordable, but what is affordable right now, right? I mean, you look at childcare, it is cheaper to go to UW system than it is to send our children even to an early childhood education center. And so there's a lot that we have to take a look at.
So that was County Exec David Crowley from Milwaukee. I knew him when he was in the state legislature. I thought he was very impressive. What did you think, Don?
I thought so too, and especially that little snippet that we got. It was a great conversation, and I was also a part of that. I went to University of Wisconsin Oshkosh, the past 4 years, about 6 months ago, and I'm currently still paying the repercussions of that tuition cost with that UW system. So what he's talking about is very real and happens to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, when a candidate for governor of Wisconsin says the UW education is no longer affordable, I think everyone needs to stand up and take notice, because it used to be a promise here. If you got good enough grades, you could get into the UW either here in Madison or other places, and it wouldn't cost you an arm and a leg. But now it costs you an arm and a leg, as you just found out as a newly minted grad.
Yeah, and on top of that, I was originally from Illinois, right? So I came to UW Oshkosh with out-of-state tuition, and that's even more. I can't imagine just what in-state tuition is. I don't really know the exact numbers on that, but it's probably a pretty hefty amount.
And then were you able to get in-state tuition the next couple of years, or were you out of state the whole time?
I was out of state the whole time.
Oof.
Yep, the whole time, and
that's a burden.
Just a little bit, just a little bit. I gotta be careful about my apartment rent. Let me tell you.
Yeah, I mean, you and everybody else, because as David Crowley then pointed out, what is affordable? It's not just the UW system. We had a long talk about prices of rent, price of housing, in part because hedge funds from California are going into Milwaukee and elsewhere in Wisconsin and just buying up properties. They're absentee landlords. They don't care about the community. They're not from the community. They don't live in the community. And they're just speculating on real estate, which drives up the price of housing if you own, drives up the price of rent if you're a tenant. And so David Crowley, he comes from one of the poorest districts in the state, the most incarcerated zip code in the state down there in Milwaukee. And he speaks from real experience. He talked about being kicked out of several places when he was growing up in high school, having had to move from one apartment to another, one eviction notice after another. So he has a real personal experience about what this affordability crisis means and can speak to that with real personal knowledge. And I also thought he was a very affable, likable guy.
And on top of that, you know what? And he smelled good. He smelled good. He smelled really. I got to know what his cologne was, because it was just, oh man, yeah. He was a great interview yesterday, and we appreciate his time for sure.
Yeah, just a wonderful smile, too. Very likable man. And so this is the series of interviews I'm doing on my Wisconsin Forward podcast for Civic Media at civicmedia.us. We've got Kelda Royce coming in for a half-hour interview later today, this morning even. And then Brett Halsey, who I knew in a previous incarnation and who has run in previous incarnations for governor, too. And he's coming in tomorrow morning. So we're trying to get a good sampling of the folks who are running. We also had Ryan Sternad. I know he came in too, and we have that up on our Civic Media website under the Wisconsin Forward podcast. So it's trying to give you, the Wisconsin citizen, you, the listener to Civic Media, you, the visitor to civicmedia.us, a sampling of this good bench that the Democrats have in this race for governor. Always interested in who you think you'd like to see in the governor's chair now that Governor Evers is retiring. The phone number is 608-879-8255. So give us a call, send us a text. One thing I liked about both David Crowley and the Lieutenant Governor, Sarah Rodriguez, was the way they saluted Governor Evers, who's on his way out the door, obviously. And they both commended him for the way he's handled his office. And I thought that was impressive. I've not always been the biggest Governor Evers fan. I wanted him to be a little stronger on the budget. I was hoping maybe he would have vetoed the whole thing. That wasn't his style, and I wanted a bit more of a fighter, though he's been a good goalie, I guess, against these Republicans. But I always just kind of chuckled because, I'm a political sports writer, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And as a political athlete, he never struck me as a great athlete because he is not a great public speaker. He can't debate. He was the worst debater on stage the first time he ran. And yet his authenticity rang true, which is what the lieutenant governor talked about, and what County Exec David Crowley talked about when they saluted the outgoing governor. So that's our little series on who's running for governor, who your favorite is. You can still call us here at 608-879-8255 and let us know. But we're going to switch gears here for a second because a friend of mine has just walked into the studio. Nick Ramos, Executive Director of Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. Good morning, Nick.
Good morning, boss man. Happy Wednesday.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday, right?
I think so.
All right.
I think so.
All day long, as they say. How have you been doing?
It's just been a crazy time, man. It's an off year technically because we don't have any elections or anything happening, but it feels like the world's on fire, man. So it's busy every day.
Yeah. Well, the world is on fire. It's on fire literally with global warming. It's on fire with our country, our democracy on fire, which is one reason I wanted to have you in here today because, it's just been crazy what Donald Trump has been doing to our democracy. What's your take on that?
We don't have enough time to talk about it, man. But, real quick, Cliff Notes version. The institutions that we've assumed would always be there are literally getting steamrolled on every single day. And people don't, I guess in a state like Wisconsin, we feel the impacts through SNAP benefits being taken away up and down. We feel about like these health insurance premiums that are going to be skyrocketing here. But there's a lot of other things that are happening around the country that I don't think it's been really felt here in Wisconsin yet. So, everybody's kind of just going on like it's business as usual when it's not.
What are some of those other things we haven't felt yet that's coming our way?
Well, we got a taste of it when Judge Hannah Dugan got arrested in her courtroom in Milwaukee. ICE presence in our communities. They're trying to normalize it and legitimize it. And yet, last time I checked, man, child daycare and schools and some of these other places, I don't think I want ICE agents in there.
Yeah, it was one of the questions I asked these candidates for governor. What are you going to do if you're governor and ICE is in Wisconsin? Are you going to protect our citizens here? They all said they would, of course, but it's a tall task.
Yeah,
we've got some sheriffs in some counties, working hand in glove with ICE, and we haven't seen anything like that in this country, at least since the roundup of Japanese Americans in World War II or Chinese Americans in the late 19th century.
I think it's interesting that history somehow always repeats itself. But also when we have these very authoritarian powers that end up taking over, what they do, they try to erase, parts of our history so that we can't look back and be able to learn from them and that things like this can happen. And so we're living in historic times. I say that every year, but man, does it feel realer than ever right now?
Yeah, it couldn't get more real. I wish it was less real. I wish we were living in less interesting times.
Yeah, you and me both, man.
Because it's... and I'm glad my parents aren't here. My dad fought the Nazis in Europe. That's the shocking thing to me. Every family in America almost has a father, if you're my age, or grandfather or great-grandfather who fought in World War II against the fascists. And now we have a guy who's a fascist in the White House.
You don't say.
It's unreal. And every day there's a new obscenity from this guy. That's... he lives for the drama too. As long as he's a classic narcissist. So as long as we're thinking about and talking about him, he's happy.
He loves calling reporters piggies, man.
Yeah. What do you make of that? On Friday, he called a reporter from Bloomberg, the correspondent, Catherine Lucy, quiet piggy, because she was doing a follow-up question on the Epstein files.
Wow, is that rich for one? But two, also, I would say beyond the humor part of that, like when you have the president of the United States saying that to, someone in their press corps, like it would make me afraid to ask questions, to this man and fear that I'm going to get berated or get talked down on. So,
and even worse, what goes on social media, they've got all sorts of, hateful comments, and then maybe threats. That's the serious thing. I mean, people are getting threatened, and he has no regard for the media. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we come back. My guest is Nick Ramos. I'm Matt Rothschild here on the John and Gordy Show on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back. Maybe talk a little bit about Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
Beware of the blob, it creeps and leaps and glides and slides across the floor, right through the door and all around the wall. A splotch, a blotch, be careful of the blob.
Hey, welcome back to the John and Gordy Show. John and Gordy are off today. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in for them. Delighted to be with you and with my producer, Dom Lee. If you want to join our conversation, please do so. Give us a call, send us a text, 608-879-8255. That's 608, of course, 879-8255. And with me still in the studio here is an old friend of mine, Nick Ramos, the executive director at the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign. Thanks for hanging on, Nick.
Hey, Pleasure to be here, boss man, per usual.
You always answer the phone, always answer the call. So before the break, we were talking about this reporter from Bloomberg, Catherine Lucy, who on Friday dared to ask the president an obvious question about the Epstein files, and he called her Piggy and said, "Quiet, Piggy." That's how he treats women. And then the White House press office, of course, couldn't apologize for the president. No, they had to defend the president. So they came out with a statement that said this reporter behaved in an inappropriate and unprofessional way. And then they said this, which is just playground bully stuff. If you're going to give it, you have to be able to take it. I mean, it's just, how old are these folks at that White House press office? They're all about 14.
Oh, dude, I mean, they got interns running those accounts, man. You see the memes and stuff. I honestly, like, it's really disappointing because I feel like we're normalizing so much juvenile behavior for what it used to be an office. It didn't matter what party it was, you respected it. Now it's like, I mean, Megyn Kelly a while ago said, man, Trump called people pigs, slobs, dogs, and he's talking about women, man. And this is the guy who's supposed to be representing our country, man. You think this is really a role model for kids to look up to?
No, but the amazing thing is we knew this from day one. We knew this from the first campaign. I mean, and still the guy got elected.
Oh, because people are sitting here and saying things like, well, I only care about tax breaks. I only care about, you know, what financially is going to be beneficial for me instead of kind of the social and some of the dignity aspects of our society. And I'm kind of disappointed that we let this behavior just run rampant instead of checking it in real time, because again, we want our reporters to be able to ask questions and not get absolutely swatted and talked down to.
I mean, we could have checked it in real time. I remember after that Hollywood tape came out the first time he was running with this disgusting comment, there was Kellyanne Conway on Fox News that night saying just what you're saying. Oh, people don't really care about that. They care about jobs. They care about the economy. And then, and then the women's vote, 53% of white women voted for the guy anyway. So it's just unbelievable. And he's still ridiculing reporters again. Yesterday, there was Trump. He brought Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia to the White House, praised him appallingly. If you can catch this, as a protector of human rights, despite the fact that the CIA concluded he was behind the horrible murder and grotesque
Jamal Khashoggi
mutilation of, as you say, Jamal Khashoggi, Washington Post columnist. Trump said he knew nothing about it. That is, that Khashoggi was killed by bin Salman. Trump says bin Salman knew nothing about it. And then in typical anything is justified mode, Trump adds, a lot of people didn't like that gentleman.
Jesus.
Yeah. And then he said things happen. I mean, it was just unbelievable what Trump was saying. And then he says, me and the Crown Prince were really good friends. And then when a reporter from ABC, Mary Bruce, asked bin Salman about it, Trump called the inquiry about Khashoggi a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question, and said, I think the license should be taken away from you at ABC because your news is so fake and so wrong. I mean, this is the guy who has no respect for the First Amendment, no respect for freedom of speech, no respect for freedom of the press, no respect for human rights.
Preach right now, man. Preach. Because honestly, like, first and foremost, man, prayers to Jamal Khashoggi's family, man. Nobody deserves to be tortured and killed like the way that man was killed. And then to have to watch basically one of the benefactors and the people that folks are alleging it was behind, the murder and assassination of this man. Like, you're inviting him into the Oval Office. You're giving him the red carpet. You're over here basically legitimizing this man's presence all over, basically an arms deal. I mean, we're exchanging weapons for money, and this guy's talking about all the investments. And it basically means that if you can pay your way to play with Trump, he does not care if you are doing, humanitarian, like absolute, like trying to kill people, and like doesn't matter at the end of the day that you end up doing the most nefarious things as long as you're willing to pay Trump.
Yeah, if the money's coming in, he doesn't care. He also has this love affair with the strongman. I mean, that's why he loves Putin. I mean, that's why he loves Xi. That's why he loves Mohammed bin Salman. These guys who are tough guys. He'll talk about them. They're really tough. That's his, he's a gangster wannabe gangster. Now he's a real gangster because he's got the power to be a real gangster. And he loves the fellow gangsters.
I guess we'll see what happens when these Epstein files get released, man. We'll see who's the real gangsters at the end of the day. Because honestly, there's nothing gangster about pedophilia. And I got to tell you that, like, that right now, you get to watch him cozy up with the strongest men out here, but yet he's one of the weakest presidents I've ever seen in my life. And, you know, we can't give him legitimacy. Otherwise, yeah, he becomes a strong man.
Yeah, but he's weak, yet he has, you know, he's a weak man. He's a sick man.
Amen.
But he's a 4-year-old with nuclear weapons.
I guess that's true, too. So, you know.
And so, you know, that's one of the reasons I can't sleep at night. I mean, there are a lot of reasons looking at what they've done to our democracy here. As you said at the beginning, Nick Ramos, the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, a lot of our fabled checks and balances are falling by the wayside. A lot of the institutions are not holding up.
But the people are fighting, Matt.
But the people are fighting. That's what's keeping us alive right now. That's what's keeping our democracy alive. So I want to thank you for being our guest on the John and Gordy Show. Nick Ramos, Executive Director of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign.
Hey, man. Invite me more, dude.
Oh, anytime. And we'll be right back after the break to talk about sandhill cranes and why some Republicans in the legislature up the street want to start shooting them. Please stay tuned to the John and Gordy Show on the Civic Media Radio Network.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs. Whoa, 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 whoa. They're eating the cats. Meow, 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 meow. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Conversation. A civic media station.
ABC News, I'm Sherry Preston. The bill authorizing the Justice Department to release the full FBI files on Jeffrey Epstein, passing the House unanimously and the Senate by unanimous consent. President Trump has said he would sign it. ABC's Mary Bruce asking the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, the journalist killed and dismembered back in 2018. U.S. intelligence identifying the Crown Prince as likely ordering the murder. ABC's President Trump's actually response to the question.
As far as this gentleman is concerned, he's done a phenomenal job. You're mentioning somebody that was extremely controversial. A lot of people didn't like that gentleman that you're talking about. Whether you like him or didn't like him, things happen, but he knew nothing about it. And we can leave it at that. You don't have to embarrass our guest by asking a question like that.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott promising an appeal now that a 3-judge panel has struck down the state's newly drawn congressional maps. This is ABC News.
Parallel parking in Madison? Impossible. Finding real conversation on the radio? Probable. With 92.7 WMDX.
For 92.7 WMDX News, I'm Savannah Tomei Olson.
Now, the question is passage of Senate Bill 504.
It was a marathon of a day in the state Senate.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is passed. The clerk will read the next bill. Senate Bill 521.
They took up almost 70 bills and resolutions. Republicans' priorities included bills that ban health care for people here illegally and further legislate the definition of abortion in Wisconsin. They also voted on a measure to repeal Governor Tony Evers' 400-year veto that increased school funding. State Senator Chris Kapenga, a Republican.
The governor stepped in and did something he's never done before, and that is he changed the bill in a way that no governor in the history of the state of Wisconsin has changed. And that's very concerning for us because the legislature is where the voice of the people is supposed to take place.
As part of the Republican-authored budget, Wisconsin schools are getting increases for special education funding, but no increase in general state aid. Democrats say Republicans' priorities don't address high costs people all over the state are feeling, and that includes in our schools, where more and more districts are proposing referendums just to keep the lights on. Democratic State Senator Chris Larson.
You've decided to raise property taxes across the state, and you did it in a way where you're forcing the local school boards to make up the difference. And if anybody is watching from a local school board or anyone who's watching who's a local property taxpayer and is wondering why their property taxes continue to go up, I have 3 answers for you. It's the state, it's the state, it's the state.
The bill passed along party lines and heads to the assembly. The whole measure is about repealing Governor Tony Evers' veto, and ironically, he will have the final say and the ability to veto this bill. I'm Savannah Tomei Olson, 92.7 WMDX News.
A change at running back. Hi, I'm Mike Clemens with Sports NFL. Packers running back Josh Jacobs may miss Sunday's game against Minnesota. He's dealing with a left knee injury after hitting the turf at MetLife against the Giants.
It's just more or less trying to get the swelling down, and unfortunately, that's a pretty hard surface over there, and sometimes the byproduct of that.
It's the same stadium where Aaron Rodgers tore his Achilles tendon and receiver Malik Neighbors went down with a season-ending ACL. Packers defensive tackle Warren Brinson joked on Twitter it was the first game he'd ever played on concrete. College basketball, the undefeated Badgers take on Brigham Young Friday afternoon in Utah. Greg Gard.
Well, we're hands full, but it's great for us. We need it. It's a great opportunity in this time of year to play a game like that against an exceptionally talented team. That's why you do this. These guys want these type of games, and so do I.
That's the Badgers men's head basketball coach, Greg Gard. Sports on Mike Clemens.
Our lakes are gorgeous. Just don't swim in them. 92.7 WMDX, keeping Madison honest, one broadcast at a time.
It is going to be partly to mostly cloudy today with a high in the low to mid 40s this afternoon. Tonight, mostly cloudy. We're going to drop to 38 for a low. Tomorrow, a couple of scattered light showers possible with highs in the low to mid 50s. I'm meteorologist Sean Cable. Currently, it's 28.
This portion of John and Gordy brought to you by Verlo. Experience the Verlo mattress difference. For a limited time, purchase a mattress from the V3 collection and get a free upgrade to an adjustable foundation. American-made, locally crafted, right here in Madison. Come shop at Verlo and sleep well tonight.
As veterans, we're no strangers to helping others.
That's what we were taught, service before self.
But we do have one question for the veterans listening.
When was the last time you reached out for help?
If you or someone you know needs resources, whether it's for stress, finances, employment, or mental health, don't wait. Reach out.
Find more information at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach.
Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
Being blind doesn't look how others may think. Retinitis pigmentosa aimed to overwhelm my family.
It tried to cut me down. I know where to find.
John and Gordy on the radio. 92.7 is the place to go. It's John and Gordy, John and Gordy, John and Gordy, John and Gordy. In the morning, in the morning, in the morning, in the morning. It's John and Gordy, John and Gordy, John and Gordy, John and Gordy. At the break of dawn, get your coffee on. John and Gordy on the radio. 92.7 is the place to go.
Hey, welcome back to John and Gordy in the morning on the Civic Media Radio Network here on 92.7. As you've guessed by now, I'm not John, I'm not Gordy, I'm Matt Rothschild.
Really?
The guys are off this morning anyway. They've been covering the afternoon shift, so I'm subbing in for them today. Happy to be here with you, with Dom. You can join our conversation, 608-879-8255. Give us a call, send us a text, 608-879-8255. You can tell us who your favorite candidate is for governor. You can tell us your reaction to Donald Trump's treatment of reporters, especially women reporters, his cozying up to the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, the torturer and murderer, or you can talk to us about birds, because in this half hour, we are going to be talking about a bill that's at the state capitol this morning. There's a hearing at 9 o'clock. I might run down there after the show and give them a piece of my mind because Republicans want to start hunting sandhill cranes here in Wisconsin. And with me to discuss that now is Ryan Michalesco. He's the communications and advocacy specialist for the International Crane Foundation up in Baraboo. Ryan, welcome to the John and Gordy Show.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. They're going to have to get you a jingle like that.
Yeah, I can't wait. I really appreciate you coming in. And I want to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners a little bit about the International Crane Foundation, which I was happy to visit for the first time in about 30 years last summer. And you've just got incredible exhibits up there. Being able to see all the different kinds of cranes around the world. It's quite a treasure of Wisconsin. If you, the listener, haven't been up to Baraboo to the International Crane Foundation, you got to get up there sometime.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on. The International Crane Foundation is really a Wisconsin story at its heart. ICF was founded by two renowned ornithologists, Dr. George Archibald and Dr. Ron Sowie, who met studying at Cornell and decided to work on cranes together. Ron's family had a horse farm in Baraboo and offered to lease it to Ron and George for $1 a year to start ICF and begin their work with cranes.
Well, that's a good price.
It really is. And of course, we've since expanded. There's 15 species of cranes around the world. We have 2 here in North America. 10 of the 15 are threatened or endangered. The most abundant species, the sandhill crane, we're here to talk about today. And the other is the whooping crane, which is highly endangered. And we also have those here in North America.
Not only in North America, you have them here in Wisconsin. I don't know if I'm supposed to say it, but you can see them sometimes up at Horicon Marsh. Don't scold me now.
Yeah, absolutely. Whooping cranes are really special birds. There's only about 700 in the wild in all of North America. We're really fortunate that we have some here in Wisconsin. Like you said, ICF has been leading the reintroduction effort of the whooping crane and try to bring those birds back to the Midwest, the upper Midwest. In many ways as a backup to that wild flock that has this really incredible migration from all the way in far north Canada to the Gulf Coast of Texas.
Down to Aransas there at the Gulf in Texas.
Exactly.
But I've seen whooping cranes in southern Columbia County in a farmer's wetland in the fall, not this fall, several falls ago when they were started their migration south. And they've just started their migration now. So keep your eyes out. There are still whooping cranes flying around Wisconsin, aren't there?
There are. Yes, there are. We've had some sightings this past weekend. We actually hosted our Great Midwest Crane Fest up at the Crane Foundation and the Aldo Leopold Foundation this past weekend. And welcomed a lot of people to our site and to Sauk County in Wisconsin. A lot of people from out of state were able to come and enjoy the cranes. So it was a really great opportunity, but they were here to see the sandhill cranes that we're here to talk about today.
So let's talk about this bill. What's wrong with it, in your opinion?
Let me give you a little bit of background. This is an issue that we've been dealing with for 12 years. It's the third time in 12 years that this bill's come forward, or similar bills. And for that time, the folks bringing it forward have really made this issue about crop damage. Sandhill cranes do cause crop damage. There's no hiding that. And they can cause significant crop damage. And for a long time, that's been the excuse for this bill, why we need a hunting season. It's to solve crop damage. That's been pretty much the one talking point. And in reality, there's never been evidence that a hunting season is going to solve crop damage. And in fact, last year, the Crane Foundation and our expert researcher who's going to testify this morning, Ann Lacey, served on the Legislative Study Committee on Sandhill Cranes down at the Capitol as well. And that committee met for 6 months to hear testimony, listen to experts coming from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We had former folks from the DNR. We had farmers on the committee. And overwhelmingly, that committee heard that there's no evidence that a hunting season is going to solve this issue. And that's why they just can't be linked together. It's not a good thing.
Is there a different solution for the crop damage that sandhill cranes cause?
Yeah, there is. And it's one that ICF started helping develop years and years ago with the field testing that we conducted in our Briggsville study area. And that's an area in central Wisconsin where we've been studying sandhill cranes for 30 plus years, banding them out in the field, monitoring them, seeing which territorial pairs are coming back, how many chicks are being laid. So we have a lot of data on these birds. And you're exactly right. There is that non-lethal deterrent. It's a seed treatment that goes on the corn. And basically, the cranes don't like the taste of it. They try the corn, they spit it out. We acknowledge that it's not an entirely perfect solution, but neither is a hunting season at all. So we really can't tie these two things together.
It's not entirely perfect because it costs a lot, or what's the downside?
Yeah, exactly. It's an added cost for the farmer, and farmers have enough costs. So that's what we've been working to do. And what we think is the most meaningful solution here is that the state's able to provide those farmers the support that they say they need.
Now, if I'm listening here in Dane County to you from the International Crane Foundation talk about this, and I'm a skeptical person, I'm going to say, look, the sandhill crane population has just gone through the roof. You can throw a rock and hit one if you're walking down the sidewalk. The population has grown tremendously, it seems, from a casual observer's perspective over the last 30 years. What's wrong with a little bit of hunting?
Yeah, well, let's go back even a little bit further than that. In the 1940s, Aldo Leopold, renowned conservationist here in Wisconsin, estimated that there were only about 20 pairs of sandhill cranes left in this state.
Really?
So in less than 100 years, we've made a remarkable comeback. But that doesn't mean they're out of the water. There's still a lot of threats that these cranes are facing. A really new and novel threat is highly pathogenic avian influenza. This is something that cranes around the world are being hit by.
Is this the same bird flu that's hitting chickens and turkeys?
It's similar bird flu, H5N1, but highly pathogenic avian influenza is really carried and really can harm wild bird flocks. What we've seen just in the last month in Europe, they're experiencing an outbreak in common cranes, which are very similar to sandhill cranes in their ecology, their threats, and how they interact with humans. And they've lost 35 to 40,000 birds just in 1 month.
Wow.
And in the spring in Indiana, Tennessee, Kentucky, those states a little bit further south during migration, we lost up to 4% of the eastern population, which is the population that Wisconsin's a part of.
So that's a big number. What's 4% of that population equal to?
That's about 3,000 to 4,000 birds. So when we only have a population of 100,000 birds in this flyway, and a lot of people equate sandhill crane population to the total population, but the central flyway, which most people think of, that's the one that goes notoriously through the Platte River in Nebraska. That's about 10 to 12 times the size of our population. So,
I went to the Platte River in Nebraska once.
Isn't it incredible?
It's incredible, but I was about 2 weeks early. It was a cold and slow spring, so I missed the massive numbers of sandhill cranes. I did see some. Mostly I saw snow geese. There were snow geese everywhere. But I'd never seen a sandhill crane till I came to Wisconsin 45 years ago. And I just fell in love with the sandhill cranes. And, I've been a bird watcher since I was 4 years old. Now I'm 67. I always wanted to see a sandhill crane. I always wanted to see a whooping crane. I had a book about the whooping crane population flying down to Aransas Wildlife Refuge in Texas, sitting next to my bed when I was a little kid. And I've been down to Aransas to see the whooping cranes there, though just my luck, I was sick that day. So anyway, I've always been worried about the whooping crane population. And one of the things that worries me about this sandhill crane bill is not so much that it's going to impair the population of sandhill cranes, though it might, but that it could, impair the population of whooping cranes, because some hunters who are out there, may mistake a sandhill crane for a whooping crane, or they may be migrating together, which they do sometimes, right? And then the population of whooping cranes is jeopardized.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And, on the sandhill front, we have a lot of evidence, having studied these birds for 30 plus years right here in Wisconsin, that we think they could be nearing their carrying capacity. Just this year, our data is showing that, and this could be because of the HPAI outbreak in the states earlier this year, but 32% fewer sandhill cranes on the territories that we study this year, and only 1 in 5 territories produced a chick. And we think those are really important numbers, because cranes aren't ducks or geese. They're very different. They're long-lived. They take a long time to successfully mate and breed, and even longer time to successfully fledge young. And that means their numbers just don't rebound like they could. If we have a hunting season in the state on their critical breeding grounds, that could have significant effect. What happens here affects the whole population.
And I saw a press release you put out. It showed that actually a couple years back in Oklahoma, hunters did kill 4 whooping cranes.
Yeah, that's something we've heard time and time again. This was even testimony provided to the Legislative Study Committee that no real hunter, no good sportsman would kill a whooping crane. But accidents happen, and unfortunately, it only takes one. You're right. In 2023, 4 Oklahoma hunters pled guilty to killing 4 whooping cranes in 2021, and that's really devastating. That was about 1% of the wild flock in that Aransas wood buffalo population. But here in Wisconsin, we only have about 70 whooping cranes in the whole eastern population. The loss of one would be years and years of setback.
And, I'm not against hunting, period, but it just doesn't seem that sporting to me to be hunting a bird that is that big. I mean, their wingspan are 6 feet, 7 feet, and they're slow flyers. I mean, that can't be a tough shot, seeing these giant birds flapping their wings or gliding ever so slowly in the sky in a flock. It can't be that tough a shot or that invigorating or exhilarating a hunt.
Yeah, I don't think that's what this is about at all. I grew up as a hunter, and I just think that there are some things that don't need to be hunted, and sandhill cranes are one of them.
Ryan, what do you hunt?
I grew up hunting turkey, deer, big sportsman, but I'm a proud birder now, and spend a lot of time out in the field enjoying and observing birds. And that's another thing that maybe we can talk about after the break. But there's a lot of good numbers about how birders really contribute to the economy, and the fiscal nature of this bill is also important to discuss.
I'd like to pursue that because birding in Wisconsin, I just found out yesterday, 1 out of 3 Wisconsinites is a bird watcher.
It's an incredible
That's
boom.
Twice the national rate. We're one of the highest percentage of bird watchers in the country. We'll be talking a little bit more about birds, the Sandhill Crane Bill. I'm speaking with Ryan Michalescu, Communications and Advocacy Specialist for the great organization Up in Baraboo, a real treasure of Wisconsin. It's the International Crane Foundation. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in for John and Gordy on John and Gordy in the Morning here on WMDX, the Civic Media Radio Network, and we'll be right back.
Lord, I can't change what you find free, but yeah.
That's the sound of Sandhill Cranes. I'm Matt Rothschild, subbing in for John and Gordy on John and Gordy in the Morning here on the Civic Media Radio Network, WMDX here in Madison, 92.7. We're listening to that voice of the Sandhill Crane because I'm speaking with Ryan Michalescu, the communications and advocacy specialist for the International Crane Foundation up in Baraboo, and I urge you to go visit there if you haven't yet. It's a terrific place. The phone number to call if you want to join the conversation or text us, 608-879-8255. We did get a text from Steve in Mount Horeb who says, I've been hunting all my life. I'm not going to eat a sandhill crane. People are just going to shoot them for fun and leave them lay. This is a bad idea, he says, to open a hunting season for cranes, and I agree. Dom, our great producer, Ryan here, asked at break, what is the difference between a sandhill crane and a whooping crane? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, I would say here in Wisconsin, the biggest consideration between the two is their rarity. You know, endangered whooping cranes and sandhill cranes both were reduced to really low numbers in the past century. And sandhill cranes didn't get quite as low, so they've been able to make a much more successful comeback. But whooping cranes lost most of their genetic material. There are no more whooping cranes left here in the Midwest. And of course, only a handful left in that larger wild flock in the central U.S. And when a population gets that low, it's hard to bring them back. You know, you need genetic diversity in a flock, and the loss of just one bird loses a lot of that genetic diversity. But in terms of their physical structure, sandhill cranes are gray birds. They're a little bit smaller than whooping cranes. Whoopers are very tall, bright white, black wing tips with a bright red head. And they're beautiful birds. They really are.
Yeah.
So if they were flying, would you be able to tell the difference, or is it you would be just slightly?
Yeah, you know, it can be hard to tell them apart, especially when you only have one whooping crane, a big flock of sandhills. It can be challenging. It's not easy.
And some sandhill cranes are lighter gray than darker gray or rusty gray.
Exactly. There's a lot of variation in their coloring, especially, you know, from juvenile to adult and from months of the year, you know, when they're breeding versus not.
But the whooping crane is pure white, except for the little tips of black on the wings. They're white as Ryan's dress shirt right now. They're that color white. And so if you see one, you'll know it for sure, especially if you see it pretty close. But, you know, the problem is you got a flock of 20 sandhill cranes and 2 whooping cranes, and you're shooting at the flock. You know, you can nail one.
Yeah, and think about the times of the day that you're hunting. Early morning, you know, low light. It can be hard to tell them apart. And misidentification is a big issue. That's what the hunters pled guilty to in Oklahoma. And just since the elk hunt in Wisconsin was established, 9 elk have mistakenly been shot during deer season. So, you know, misidentification happens.
Yeah, that's not a big herd either. Yeah. So, you mentioned before the break, Ryan, how birders contribute to the state, or you wanted to talk about that. So go.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about every 5 years does a national recreation survey where they break down all of the different recreation types. And 2 of the big ones are, of course, wildlife watching, birding, and hunting. But what we hear a lot of times is how much hunters contribute to the economy. And I think it's time that we talk about how much birders and wildlife watchers contribute to the economy. Wildlife watchers, there are 148 million, which is about 10 times hunters, 14.4 million. Birders, 96.3 million. In terms of revenues generated by birders, 250 million, which is about 5 times that of hunters at 45 million.
That's a lot. Do you have it broken down in Wisconsin, or is that going to take a little more research?
That'll take a little more research, but you know, Fish and Wildlife Service, if you're listening, we'd love those numbers.
Get on it. We want them. You wanted to talk a little bit more about this bill that is in the state legislature today. There's a hearing at 9:00 up at the Capitol about this bill that Republicans have introduced that would allow the hunting of sandhill cranes in Wisconsin. You mentioned there's some fiscal problems with that.
Yeah, you know, this bill goes back to the Legislative Study Committee, which along party lines voted this bill out and referred it to the Sporting Heritage Committees in the Assembly and the Senate. And today the Senate's bringing that forward for a hearing. That's in room 201 Southeast at the Capitol at 9 a.m. And of course, we invite you to attend, hear the testimony from all of the different groups, and of course, share your own if you'd like. But the big problem with both of these bills is they're they're not fiscally responsible. So aside from all of the issues with the population, aside from all of the issues with misidentifying whooping cranes, aside from bird flu, these bills are going to lose money. They're going to cost the Wisconsin taxpayer. The DNR fiscal estimate that looks into these bills, they do this for all of the legislation that comes through the Capitol. They refer it out to an agency to do the math. SB 112, which is the bill that came out of the study committee, which had a lot of great things in it for farmers, although they shouldn't be tied to a hunt. That bill would lose $400,000 annually. However, one of the things we're going to contend with today is a substitute amendment introduced by Senator Staff Schultz, the chair of the Sporting Heritage Committee, who's having the hearing today. Pulls out all of that farmer funding, reduces the permit fees, and will lose probably about $1.6 million a year. So really, taxpayers are paying for a few hunters that want to hunt cranes, not the other way around.
I'm speaking with Ryan Michalescu. He's the communications and advocacy specialist for the International Crane Foundation up in Baraboo. If someone's been listening and they want to know more about the International Crane Foundation, how do they find out more? If they want to support the great work that the International Crane Foundation does in preserving these tremendous species, iconic species, how do they help?
Yeah, the best thing they can do is go to www.savingcranes.org. You can read about our great work there. You can become a member. And today, the most important thing you can do is show up at 9 a.m. at the Capitol, room 201 Southeast for this hearing.
And the website again, savethecranes.org?
Savingcranes.org.
Savingcranes.org. There you go. That's the International Crane Foundation, one of the great treasures of the state of Wisconsin. Ryan Michalescu, thanks so much for being my guest today. It's great meeting you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And we'll be back in just a couple of minutes with Jeff Mandel, the head of Law Forward, this great nonprofit legal organization that is fighting the anti-democratic forces in Wisconsin and in the country. So you'll want to stay tuned for that. We'll be right back on John and Gordy in the morning on the Civic Media Radio Network, right here, 92.7.
Rock and roll, because we're really gonna rock tonight. charge. Goose step mama, taken by and large. While you tinker with some tailor, someone sold you to a sailor. Goose step mama, oh yeah, goose step mama. Goose step mama, boogie all night long.
Your radio network. I'm Matt Rothschild. John and Gordy are doing the afternoon shift today, so I'm subbing in for them this morning. Happy to do so. I'm glad they invited me. I'm glad Dom invited me. And you can join our conversation at 608-879-8255. That's 879-8255. We did get a text from Joel in Madison wondering where is it legal to hunt sandhills and what the population of sandhill cranes in the Platte River, what that population is. It's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands is my memory on that. Where is it legal? I just looked it up. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Colorado, Idaho, Kansas, Kentucky, Minnesota. That's a surprise. Montana, New Mexico, North Dakota, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, and Wyoming. A lot of states are hunting the sandhill crane. And when I was out west once, we were on a road trip and we went into a bar and there was a sign about the sandhill crane hunt. I just couldn't believe it. But then, it's a thing for some of these states, but it's a real question of preserving a species, actually preserving two species because of the danger of hitting a whooping crane. And I didn't realize how small the population of sandhill cranes was in Wisconsin back in Aldo Leopold's day. So that was kind of interesting. And again, the International Crane Foundation are a great place. With me now, changing subjects back to democracy subjects, Jeff Mandel, head of Law Forward, a pro-democracy law firm here in Wisconsin that's just a few years old, but just done incredible work on a whole broad range of pro-democracy issues. Jeff, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
I was at your website yesterday and I saw that you and Russ Feingold, former U.S. Senator Russ Feingold, filed an amicus brief in a campaign finance lawsuit that I was not that familiar with. So I wanted to bring you on and have you talk about that.
Yeah, it's a really important case. And we in Wisconsin have a particularly profound understanding of this. What happened is that Vice President J.D. Vance, before he became vice president, when he was still in the Senate, he brought a lawsuit challenging a provision of federal campaign finance law that limits how much money individuals can give to a political party and how much money the political party can then give to an individual campaign. This is part of long-standing campaign finance law, part of the McCain-Feingold bill.
So that's where Russ comes in.
Exactly. And what we did with this brief is we explained to the court, which is almost certainly going to rule for the National Republican Senatorial Committee, which is the plaintiff here. We explained that you only have to look at Wisconsin to see what the consequences of this are. Because here in Wisconsin, we have limits on how much you can give a state candidate. The federal limit's around $3,000. The Wisconsin limit for a statewide candidate is $20,000.
Yeah, it's crazy.
But
even crazier,
here in Wisconsin, we eliminated, while Governor Walker was in charge, we eliminated the exact kind of limits that they're talking about here, so that an individual can give unlimited funds to a political party, and a political party can give unlimited funds to a candidate, even in a nonpartisan election. And so if you look at our Supreme Court elections here in Wisconsin, that over the last decade have gotten just absurdly expensive, from elections that a decade ago were maybe $6 or $10 million total spending to one earlier this year that was over $115 million in total spending. And we were able to show, regardless of candidate, regardless of party, specific times that wealthy, really, really wealthy, I'm not talking about people with money, I'm talking about the top 0.1%, maxed out to the candidates. That is, they and their spouse or others in their family gave that $20,000 limit, and then at the same time made an even larger contribution to the party that supported that candidate. And lo and behold, a couple of days later, a contribution from the party in almost the same amount went straight to the campaign. And it's fueling this explosion in campaign spending, and it's just not good for democracy. It's been bad in Wisconsin, and we wanted to make sure the court understood that.
And it's a bad in a bipartisan way. I mean, they're super rich Democrats and super rich Republicans who are doing it, and just makes a mockery of any campaign finance limits. If the limit is $20,000 to your favorite candidate for state Supreme Court, and then you want to get, and then you give $20 million to the party that then turns around and gives that $20 million to the candidate, why have a $20,000 limit in donations? It's absurd. But the answer isn't to get rid of all contribution limits. It's to not allow those transfers that you're filing this amicus brief about. But look, in Wisconsin, on the Republican side anyway, we have people like Diane Hendricks and Dick Eline just giving huge amounts to so-called outside groups, but they're hand in glove with the campaigns. And, we saw what Elon Musk did here too in trying to influence a Supreme Court race. So it's a huge problem. You say the court is going to rule against you. It's just going to drive another stake in the heart of McCain-Feingold.
I think that's right. And the federal courts, and particularly the U.S. Supreme Court, have just been chipping away at that law since it was passed. And this obsession that there is no difference between money and political speech is wrongheaded, and it's really, really harming our democracy.
And we're going to need a new Supreme Court, or an expanded U.S. Supreme Court that's going to go back to that Citizen United decision and a dissent by Justice John Paul Stevens, who talked about that fallacy. And we got to overturn these decisions, but that's a way off.
Yes, we exist in a world right now where there is a solid majority, a super majority on the U.S. Supreme Court that unfortunately is really hostile to democracy.
And so, what is the horizon on this change that we need to make?
Well, I think the horizon is pretty long. Either we need to amend the U.S. Constitution to change the way our Supreme Court is structured, and amending the U.S. Constitution is a difficult and lengthy process, or we're going to need to see a sea change in the membership on the court, and that too is going to be a difficult and lengthy process. We haven't had a majority of justices appointed by a Democratic president in 80 some years, and I think we'll hit a century before there's a real chance of that.
Yeah, this is a long way off, unfortunately. There is a movement to amend the U.S. Constitution that says corporations aren't persons and money isn't speech. There are a lot of activists here in Wisconsin with Wisconsin United to Amend and other groups that are pushing that. It's a national movement, needs to be supported, even though it's long term. Rome wasn't built in a day, so got to remember that. While I have you here, Jeff Mandel of Law Forward, got to ask you about Trump's pardon last week, sweeping pardon of anybody who was involved in the effort to overturn the 2020 elections.
It's deeply, deeply distressing. We know that, on Inauguration Day, President Trump pardoned everyone who was involved in the January 6th insurrection. Now, recently, we don't know exactly when, but within the last couple of weeks, they've pardoned all the people who created the conditions for that January 6th insurrection. And what I mean is the people behind the fraudulent elector scheme. Recall that on January 6th, as the protesters were breaking into the Capitol, they were there to try to pressure then Vice President Pence. And what they wanted him to do was to count these fake elector certificates. If there were no fake certificates, there really wouldn't have been an insurrection. There would have been nothing to demand. And what we showed through our litigation here in Wisconsin is that the entire scheme, the entire notion of these fake certificates began in Wisconsin, was executed here in Wisconsin, and then spread to other states. It wouldn't have happened anywhere if it hadn't happened here.
You blew the lid on this thing. You were there before anybody else.
We were pushing this well before even there was a January 6th committee in Congress to investigate this. As early as February of 2021, we were pushing here in Wisconsin to have investigations and to condemn this just profoundly anti-democratic behavior. What you had was 10 individuals, the designated representatives, if the Trump-Pence campaign had been reelected. These were the 10 individuals who had been designated to cast Wisconsin's electoral college votes. And they decided that they knew better than 3.3 million of their neighbors, and that even though Biden had won the election in Wisconsin, they were going to sign something that said, no, 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 we are the true and correct electors, and Wisconsin votes for Trump. It's really just shocking and completely unprecedented. Nothing like this had happened in American history, and it is disappointing and dangerous that the president is pardoning these folks and trying to say that this is okay.
And those fake electors, they did that even after the Wisconsin Supreme Court had said the challenge to the election was invalid and that Biden was the person who won the race here in Wisconsin.
That's correct. And one of the things that some of them have said at times is, well, we didn't know, we were doing this just in case, but it simply isn't true. One of those fraudulent electors from La Crosse, a gentleman named Bill Feehan, he recorded a podcast later that week where he talked about being in the room together at the Republican Party headquarters before they went across the street to the Capitol, and how deflating it was and how sad they all were when the news came that the Supreme Court of Wisconsin had affirmed this and that this was over. They still went across the street. They still had this meeting. They still sent this stuff to Washington. They still in January tried to get it directly into the hands of Ron Johnson, to get it to Vice President Pence that day. They just kept persisting. They would not accept the will of the voters.
And you exposed all that at Law Forward, and you sent letters to DA Ishozan here in Dane County, to Attorney General Josh Call, urging an investigation. The DA, as far as I can tell, didn't do anything. Correct me if I'm wrong. And the Attorney General didn't go after the false electors, but ultimately did go after a couple of the lawyers.
Correct. It took almost 4 years, but last summer, the summer of 2024, Attorney General Call did file charges against 3 lawyers who were ringmasters of this, and that prosecution is ongoing. It is unaffected by the president's pardon. He can only pardon people for federal offenses. He cannot pardon or stop state investigations. And so that prosecution is ongoing, and we are hopeful that it will yield a good result.
And you also had a successful civil suit, though. Talk about that a little bit.
We did. We brought the first in the nation civil suit against the fraudulent electors. And we were able, using that, to get information and to reveal how this really had started here in Wisconsin. We wound up settling that case so that we could make that information public, and we could, before the 2024 election, make sure that everyone understood exactly what had happened and how. But those folks promised not to be electors again, and they promised not to do anything like this again.
And they admitted that Biden was legitimate president, too.
Yes, they did.
Well, I just greatly admire the work that you're doing over there at Law Forward. If someone's listening now and wants to support you, it's getting on donation time. End of the year fundraising, I'm sure you're needing some help. We all need some help, especially the great nonprofits in Wisconsin that are working for democracy. How could someone support Law Forward?
Go to lawforward.org/donate. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. Donations are fully tax deductible, and you can see all that we're doing.
Cool. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
The Wisconsin landscape is lit up by a million shining stars. I am traveling up the Edens to the land of the under 21 bars. I'm going to Cheeseland, the Dells in Door County. I'm going to Cheeseland.
Hey, Matt Rothschild here. I love that song. Thanks for listening to John and Gordy in the morning. John and Gordy will be on this app, so I'm subbing for them this morning, and I've had a lot of fun doing so. Thanks for listening. I'm here with our great producer, Dom Lee. It's been quite a morning, Dom.
It really has. It really has. I'm feeling up, though. I'm feeling ready to go. I didn't have any energy drinks this morning. Thank the Lord. And I don't plan on. So it's been a great morning, though, Matt. Thank you for coming on.
You know, I've enjoyed our guests. I want to thank Nick Ramos of the Wisconsin Democracy Campaign, Ryan Michaelesco of the International Crane Foundation up in Baraboo, Jeff Mandela was just in here from Law Forward. Thank you, Dom. It's always fun working with you, either on the podcast, Wisconsin Forward, or here subbing in as I do occasionally. I want to thank John and Gordy, too, for giving me this opportunity. It's always a pleasure for me to be on Civic Media. I believe in the mission of Civic Media, so I appreciate that opportunity. You can join our conversation here, 608-879-8255. If you want to get in on the talk here, we've got a call from Dick of Madison. Dick, what's on your mind?
Can I go back to birds for a minute?
Sure, please do.
You would have loved the first house I had. I lived in Lost City in the Arboretum. My kids grew up there, and I'm telling you, we've seen everything you could imagine. Egrets, sandhill cranes, turkeys towards the end were starting to take over, and every other kind of critter down there, coyotes. It was just crazy.
I mean, the Arboretum is a real treasure. When I moved to Madison, 45 years ago, and then got married, I was hoping to move into the Arboretum just for that reason, just because the birds and wildlife are great there, Dick. So thanks so much for the call. I want to continue the conversation about birds for a second, because this winter should be a good winter for what we call winter finches, little birds and medium-sized birds coming down from Canada, because the food supply, the seed supply is diminished up there. So there are reports of evening grosbeaks coming down from Canada. I saw one report that they've come as south as Sauk County. I would love to see an evening grosbeak here in Dane County. Evening grosbeaks are the cousin to the rose-breasted grosbeak, which you'll see in the springtime in May and June in Wisconsin. But they're a little bit bigger. They have different colors. They're yellow, black, and white with a huge beak, hence the name. And usually I see them up in Minocqua, Boulder Junction occasionally, but there's a big migration coming south. So let's take a listen to the voice of the evening grosbeak. They come in flocks and usually make a lot of noise. That's sometimes how you will figure out they're there in the first place. Here is the song, or the cry, of the evening grosbeak. So that's something to be watchful for. There are other finches like red poles, which is a tiny little finch-like bird with a black cap and a red throat. They've been seen in Dane County. Pine siskins is like a little female goldfinch with gold wing bars.
What is it? Pine siskin?
Pine siskin.
Wow.
They're coming down also. And then a lot of times people here in Dane County have white-breasted nuthatches, the common nuthatch. But there's a smaller one that comes down from Canada, which is called the red-breasted nuthatch. And so they are being seen. I've seen them at my feeder here in Dane County. So look for a smaller nuthatch than usual with a slightly different coloration. You might think, boy, what is that? Is that just a regular nuthatch? No, it's a red-breasted nuthatch. So it's going to be a good winter for these funky birds, these Canadian finches, as I call them. You know, every time I get to guest host a show on Civic Media, I like to talk about birds, but I also like to talk about poetry just a little bit and leave you with a verse or two. So here is a famous Shakespearean sonnet about the fall and about getting older, which I am. And so I just want to give it a quick read, if you'll bear with me. Sonnet 73 from William Shakespeare. That time of year when thou mayest in me behold, when yellow leaves are none or few, to hang upon those boughs which shake against the cold, bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang. In me thou seest the twilight of such day as after sunset fadeth in the west, which by and by black night doth take away, death's second self that seals up all in rest. In me thou seest the glowing of such fire that on the ashes of his youth doth lie, as the deathbed whereon it must expire, consumed with that which it was nourished by. This thou perceivest, which makes thy love more strong, to love that well, which thou must leave ere long. I've always loved that sonnet by William Shakespeare. That's Sonnet 73. Consumed with that which it was nourished by is an incredible line that is stuck in my head since I first read that sonnet when I was in college. We have a couple texts coming from listeners. Mark says, growing up in Douglas County, he always had evening grosbeaks in the winter at his feeders. A good point, Mark. And he has both of his nuthatches on his feeder right now. I love that. Talking about feeding evening grosbeaks, they love black sunflower seeds. So do the nuthatches. They love black sunflower seeds. For the finches, that is the pine siskins and the redpolls, Niger seed. Get the Niger seed out there. They love that. And sometime in the winter when it's cold out, throw some suet on the ground, not just hanging on a basket. Throw it on the ground for the birds to eat that can't get on the feeders that the woodpeckers are hogging.
I know so much about birds now, Matt. I know so much about birds.
I'm telling you, Dom, I'm a bird evangelist. So there you have it. I want to thank everyone for calling, for listening, for texting, thanking our guests again. I want to thank you again, Dom. I really enjoy working with you. And I enjoy the opportunity to be on WMDX and to be on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'll catch up with you next time.
As we were saying, let the sun shine. It's the John and Gordy Show.